As far as single player campaigns in Cosmonarchy go, yeah, the content. So fundamentally, I don't actually think there is a difference, or I don't think there ought to be a difference between single player content and multiplayer content, in the sense that you should be challenged when you're playing a game. When you're playing a game that is competitive, that should be the sort. There should be a source of challenge present, no matter what you're actually playing, right? So if we accept that Cosmonarchy is designed to be played competitively, and then we accept that content within Cosmonarchy is meant to have first party content at the very least, right? Content that I'm making and the other developers are making, that are on the development team themselves. If we accept that premise that everything is meant to be built around the idea that one, we are competing for the player's time by saying, this is not just a grind. This is not just, you know, poorly presented stories and stuff like other RTS games tend to be. But it's actually a fair battleground where an opponent is competing with you and trying to defeat you and trying to get their own victory conditions achieved. When we approach the design of a scenario from that perspective, and then when the player also has bought in to the idea of competing in a game, that's where I think you get a nice little marriage between the player and the developer, the player and the content that they're going to be experiencing, because we are initially guiding players towards the idea, even in the tutorials, mind you. The tutorials are guiding players to the idea that your opponents are playing by the same rules as you are, that your opponents are trying to win just like you're trying to win, or just like you ought to be trying to win if you're playing the game, right? So we're setting the expectation that even the AI in the tutorials are trying to defeat you, and obviously the counter is you should try to defeat them, because they're trying to defeat you. So that is what is required in order to win, to even beat the basic tutorial, is to demonstrate some understanding of how the overall setup is going, right? So the first tutorial is a brand new regent. We call our commanders regents because regencies. And we have the very first tutorial is a complete introduction to the idea of a real-time strategy game. So most people will skip this because most people who are going to play Cosmonarchy have probably played an RTS before. And this is not a required reading tutorial or whatever for people to jump in if they've already played an RTS game. If they are familiar with the control scheme of most RTS games, then they don't need to play this. And if they are still kind of confused about the new things that Cosmonarchy introduces, that the control scheme of Cosmonarchy has compared to other games, they will either learn that intuitively as they progress throughout the games, the other content, or they can enable like verbose tooltips or something where you'll actually see more information on them. And maybe there will be some sort of prompt when you first start the game that says like, would you like to enable verbose tooltips? And maybe some justification for that says like, Cosmonarchy has a tweaked control scheme compared to other RTS titles. And that prompt would only even display if if you had acknowledged that like the first tutorial is only recommended if you've played RTS games before. Would you like to play it? Something like that. Or if you haven't played it, rather. Because the whole idea is that I want to make the game, to use a dreaded word, accessible. I want to make it accessible to people who actually want to try to play, who want to try to improve, and who want to seek out new challenges and seek out a new genre even. So if there are people out there who haven't really played RTS that much, or who don't feel very confident in their skills as an RTS player, even if they're sort of familiar with some control scheme elements, they should play the first tutorial. It's called New Tricks. The whole idea is that you're going to be learning a thing or two, and you're going to come in and, initially things are going to be very slow going while you get essentially instructed by a character who in universe is the whole idea behind this character is that they give orders to newcomers and they decide whether or not they're ready for combat on the field. And that's the whole idea behind the mission, actually. The whole conceit in universe is that even in the first basic tutorial that walks you through the control scheme, there's a reason for that dialogue to exist. It's not just move your mouse to the next area and right click or whatever. It's like order your soldiers to move to this location. Or whatever, it's more grounded, you could say. So that's the main plan anyway of the first tutorial. But the tutorial ends with you having to defeat an AI controlled regency that is sharing the same exact tech tree as you, so there's not really information overload in that sense. They have all access to all the same units you do. And you just walk through and have to defeat them. If you're able to defeat them, which you should be able to because they're not massively skilled, the idea is that you're basically instantly using the skills that you've just learned in the tutorial and your understanding of the control scheme to defeat an opponent that is actually trying to defeat you, even if they're a little dumb with the way that they try to do that. So there's a little bit more information here if you wanted to read through this section, but the bulk of the idea, anyway, for even the first tutorial is to present players with a challenge, to present players with something that they have to meet or exceed, or attempt to exceed, anyway, and see where that goes.